a passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, and welcome to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes, where we're changing the world, wait for it, one ohm at a time. That being said, we are on the first Thursday of November. As always, with the first Thursday of the month, we have none other than Matt Connarton from Matt Connarton Unleashed, the Matt Connarton Show. You can listen to Matt's Drive Time Show at mattconnerton.com or ipmnation.com. Or if you are in the greater Manchester, New Hampshire area, 95.3 WMNH. All those places you can hear Matt prattle from 4 to 6, Monday through Friday. For lack of a better word.
Yes.
Matt joins us every first Thursday as we discuss what the hell is going on in the world of politics here on the Dr. Kevin Show. That being said, remember, this is a live call-in show, and you can call in at 202-570-7057. That's 202-570-7057. And we will gladly welcome your comments and questions as long as they are respectful. So, Matt, let's get right into it. You have had to have been in the thick of everything going on for the last 3 or 4 days. I would, first of all, just spill the beans. What do you think about what's going on, and any idea where it's going to land?
Well, I've kind of been on pins and needles about Nevada, because as long as Biden holds everything else, and I like the Associated Press electoral map. It's my personal favorite because they've been the most aggressive about calling states, and they have had for a bit now, yesterday into today, Biden at 264 electoral votes. So, and they have Nevada favoring Biden. So if Biden can just win Nevada, then he's at 270. And I know there's a lot of talk about Pennsylvania, but the truth is, as long as everything else holds, and there's a little bit of talk, uncertainty about Arizona and so forth, but I think that'll remain in Biden's column. As long as everything else holds, Biden can afford to lose Pennsylvania. If he picks up Nevada, that'll get him to 270. Trump, on the other hand, he needs Pennsylvania. He can't win this without. He has no path to 270 without Pennsylvania. So we'll see. I'm optimistic. I do believe it's going to be Biden, but it's kind of like this great book that, you're just kind of dying to skip to the end and see how it ends, or maybe not.
Yeah, sometimes you don't know that until you get to the end and you went, I skipped why? I stayed present why? I bothered why? But
yeah,
we're going to find out.
That's right.
So obviously the presidential election is the big conversation, but there are a lot of significant conversations with this political election, and I'm sure you have more of your thumb on the pulse of this than I would, though I do tend to peruse the political news. I'm certainly not at a pundit level as you are. So tell me what else that's gone on that you think is important, especially anything that you think that people aren't talking enough about or aren't recognizing enough.
Well, I mean, the one thing I would say about that is, as far as something that's not being talked about that much, is I think there's a little bit more of a mixing of red and blue than we've seen in recent elections. If you look at Texas, for example, Biden, that's obviously a very red state. Biden overperforming in Texas. There might be, as these urban population centers continue to grow, because urban areas tend to be more liberal and rural areas tend to be more conservative. There seems to be less homogenization. In other words, there may be states that are less reliably red or blue in the future, more swing states, more battleground states in a sense. You look at the Senate race in South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, he ended up winning pretty handily and retaining his Senate seat there. But Jamie Harrison, the Democratic opponent, the challenger, did pretty well for South Carolina. So, definitely turned some heads and probably has a great political future. I think that if you look at, there's other examples, but if you look at these states, it's not as simple as it used to be as far as red states and blue states, which I think is probably a healthy thing. However, having said that, at the end of the day, most states, even though these elections ended up being much closer than we expected in these states, at the end of the day, the electoral map, as far as the presidential election, isn't that surprising. No real huge surprises that I can think of. I mean, Texas would have been a huge surprise if that had happened. I mean, one thing that we've also learned, and people are talking about this, is that blue wave that some of us were expecting just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. Any thoughts from your perspective of why the blue wave didn't happen? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of talk about polling and maybe the polls just aren't that accurate anymore. I mean, it certainly looked like a good possibility. I'm kind of surprised it didn't, only because in the sense that, you would think more people would be upset, I guess, with Trump's handling or lack thereof of coronavirus. So you would think there'd be, some level of outrage where people would just, where more Republicans would maybe cross the aisle and vote for Biden. But I'll tell you, on the other hand, Republicans are, as we've discussed many times on the show, are very, very committed and devoted to Trump. So it just was not to be. I mean, like I said, I do think Biden is going to win the election, but there's no blue wave, sadly. Well, I think that's a couple of things. I think that that in some cases the Democrats overplayed their hand, and that in places when I kind of looked at things and read things, and that everybody's tired of the gridlock in Washington, but each party does something that contributes to it. There's no clear person with a white hat on that's saying, hey, I came to the table in good faith, and I came in good faith to negotiate, and I'm willing to really do some give and take here, and I just want what's best for the American people. I think that the COVID became a politicized issue, with each side deciding that the other side was right. And the other thing is, a very incorrect, partially correct, I should say, a very partially correct narrative about all the great things Trump did for the economy, with so much downplaying of what was the economy on pace and what was the economy that Obama left him with.
Like that narrative got really trashed because people in the stuff I read, and I'm sure you read more than I did, but what I heard was that these people that people were more worried about the economy. Anybody who didn't have somebody close to them that died of COVID, died horribly, or had their life completely impacted negatively, and at this point with, 235,000 deaths, and we're just a hair short today of 103,000 new cases, and the day is not over yet. There's still a couple of more hours of reporting, and several states that haven't reported in, and some of them bigger ones, or have been bigger the last week or so. And but everybody's feeling the economy, and they keep on saying, well, Trump gave us a better economy. But I don't know that Trump gave us a better economy. He found a better economy, and he had some good moments in it. But the better economy he got wasn't really for the average Joe.
Right.
They don't get that. The average person isn't better off now than they were 4 years ago. Well, and certainly even going into the pandemic, they weren't better off than they were 4 years ago. Not the people making less than six figures, and then another drop, people making seven figures or have net worths of 10 or 12 figures. Well, they're doing just fine, and they're doing better than they've ever done. But at the cost of who? And people can't seem to get that in their head. They can't wrap their brain around it.
Well, Biden did try to explain that during one of the debates. I remember he talked about it, it's not a V-shaped recovery as Trump would have you think. It's a K-shaped recovery, because, you have people who are doing worse than ever who've been displaced because of COVID, who've lost their jobs or even lost their homes and lost their health care. Millions of people have. And then you've got the very few who are actually doing better than ever. It's a great time to sounds funny to say it this way, but it's a great time to be a billionaire.
Absolutely. Never been better.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a billionaire,
exactly.
Mind you.
Yes.
So now I want to move back to the presidency for a second, and then I kind of want to get into about the Senate and that stuff. But I want to stay with the presidency probably until first break. So I read today, and I don't have the exact quotes, but some of the major players in the Republican Party seem to be throwing Trump under the bus earlier today about some of his tweets and comments, like they have never done in the past, which, of course, is the sign of the smell of blood in the water.
Mm-hmm.
But what we also know is...
I was just going to say, there's no reason for them to continue to hitch their wagon to him if he's going to lose. They might as well begin the cleansing process now.
Now, the thing is, the one thing we know about our current maturity level of the president, of our current stand-in, fill-in for the job, is that if for some weird, odd way, he managed to steal this election, which is what it looks like it would be at this point. I'm just going to put it out there. But we know that they're trying very hard to do that, to negate votes and do all sorts of anything that's going to make things fall in their favor to see if he can wrangle it back. If he ended up in the White House for another 4 years, God forbid, the one thing we know about our president is that there are two things that he remembers. He doesn't remember the last thing he did for you. He only remembers the next thing he wants you to do for him to prove your loyalty. Mm-hmm. But more so than that, he always remembers somebody that he thinks broke loyalty to him.
Oh, of course.
So if this guy becomes president, you have people like Tillerson. I think it was Tillerson. You had McConnell, you had some top names that have been supporters all throw him under the bus. Vengeance? What do you think? If he did manage to grab the White House again, is there going to be a Republican bloodbath, or is he even capable of doing that? Just your thoughts.
Dr. Kevin, can you repeat like maybe the last 10 seconds of that? I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
I said that if he got back
better.
into the White House, do you think he would attempt to do a bloodbath with all of these key Republicans?
Probably not. Only out of self-preservation. I mean, I'm sure he'd like to, because we know that he likes to get revenge. I mean, he actually talked about that very openly in an interview once. He likes to get revenge on people that he thinks have wronged him in some way. But if he also is smart enough to realize that, he's going to need these people, then no, I don't think it would be a bloodbath.
He doesn't get in the White House. Isn't it normal for the most recent president, if the president goes out, that doesn't he become the de facto head of the party until a new president of the same party is elected, more or less? Or am I screwing that up somewhere in my... Okay.
No, I mean, usually they former presidents try to just kind of get out of the way. Like Barack Obama, we really didn't see him much over the last 4 years, except for when he began to really campaign heavily for Joe Biden, kind of toward the end. George W. Bush kind of went and did his own thing in Texas when Obama was president. So no, but you bring something up that I think will be fascinating: is how do Republicans treat Trump once he's gone? Do they have the same reverence? Do they continue to have the same reverence for him that they did for Ronald Reagan, or do they just kind of forget about him? Like, do they try to trump him? Do they treat him the same way he treats others with whom he has fallen out of favor? Does Mitch McConnell say things like, "Oh, yeah, Trump, I didn't really know him that well. I think he might have gotten us coffee, but I'm not sure I ever even met the guy." You know what I mean? It'll be very interesting to see, do they begin to stiff arm him as soon as we know that Biden is the president-elect? And it'll also be interesting to see, does Trumpism survive the defeat of Trump? Does the Republican Party continue to be this new, very coarse, tweeting personal insults at people kind of party into the future? Or do they sort of revert back to something more statesmanlike? So I think that'll be very fascinating to see. How do they treat Trump on the way out and after? And does Trumpism survive after Trump? Have Republicans maybe gotten comfortable with this way of doing business and they decide they want to continue it? That'll be fascinating.
Well, I think one of the things... we'll be right back here on the Dr. Kevin Show.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
These are the sounds of a dinner that almost didn't happen. A dinner now served, thanks to people like you. Due to COVID-19, 17 million more Americans may face hunger. Feeding America is helping our neighbors in need. And if you're able, you can too. Donations are being accepted at feedingamerica.org/coronavirus. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Hello, 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 and welcome to back to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes. Remember, we are a live call-in show, and you can call in at 202-570-7057. That's 202-570-7057. And as we always do on the first Thursday of the month, we talk politics. Probably everybody is like, oh, my God, I don't want to talk politics. I don't want to hear politics. I know the feeling. I actually checked out a lot on Election Day and even into the day after Election Day, and I'm still having a distant but flirtatious reality with my social media. But we have Matt Connarton, our own personal political pundit. You can listen to the Matt Connarton Show 4 to 6, Monday through Friday at 95.3 WMNH if you are in the Manchester, New Hampshire area, or you can go on to ipmnation.com or mattconnarton.com. Click some link that's there somewhere, I'm sure, that would take you to the live show where you could actually call in on his show. So, Matt, we were talking about Trump loses. How are the Republicans going to treat him? And how much do you think that would be affected by how quickly the state of New York sends him to prison?
Well, yeah, I mean,
I want to know.
I've been predicting all along. I've said it many times on your show that, and on my show, that I think that the moment that he's no longer president, he will be indicted by the State Attorney General's Office of New York State. I really do. I mean, it's no secret that they've been building a case against him. I mean, they already had a judge rule there. There's so much that's happened. I don't even know how long ago it was, a year ago, 2 years ago. But they had a judge rule that, the Trump family, except maybe for Tiffany, can never sit on the board of another charity because they use charities for fraud. So, yeah, I think they're just waiting. I think they're just waiting until he's no longer president. Maybe they'll lead him away from the inauguration in handcuffs. Not that he'll actually be at the inauguration. I've also been predicting that Trump will be the first president first living president who, during the peaceful transfer of power, decided to not attend. Because I don't suppose he's constitutionally required to be there that I know of. They'll just swear Biden in, and at that moment, Trump will cease being president. But I'm sure he won't be at the inauguration. I can't imagine him showing up for that.
Oh, maybe with a bunch of trucks waving Trump flags and guys shooting guns, wearing white caps or white hats, white cloaks, and on top of them MAGA hats. He
maybe.
might try to lead his posse in. Former president shot at riot by FBI by CIA, by National Guard, by who else shot him? Oh, that's right, the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts of America. Anyway.
Oh no.
I'm just dreaming of the headlines.
Right. Yes.
So, but there has been speculation, and do you think that there's anything to it? That Trump thinks that he can keep enough divisive energy, and of course, that he would get some support for this if he doesn't end up in jail, if he figures a way to slime himself out of it. He's good at it. He was born with a can of oil on each thigh. Is that he would run again in 4 years, because we had one president that did that. Do you think he can keep the magic alive and the party revved up enough to, in 4 years?
Oh, definitely not at his age.
Well, how old is he?
No,
74?
I think so, yeah.
How old is Biden?
Well, yeah, Biden's up there. Yeah, maybe age isn't such a barrier. I can't imagine it, though. And I can't imagine the Republican Party would want to relive this experiment. No, I don't see it. I think if he doesn't end up in prison, he'll just, he's actually made comments like, you might never see me again if I lose this election or something like that. He's made comments like that. Maybe he'll flee to a country that doesn't have extradition and live out the rest of his days there. I don't know. No, he won't run again.
I have wondered that as well, seriously. If he knows that everything is closing in on him, would he take an invitation to go live in Russia?
Maybe that's the end game.
And be treated like, a crown prince or however, put up and coddled, and he can cause havoc from a distance and claim that he had to do that because of the false election and all the false information, and they drove the only true Americans from America. Those hateful demo rats. Yes.
Oh boy. Maybe he can. You know what? Maybe he can move to Russia. And I have an idea, and I probably should be working in Hollywood with ideas like this. He could move to Russia, and he and Edward Snowden could share an apartment, and it would be a reality series, and it would run Sunday nights on VH1.
There you go.
Call it, I don't know, Trump Snowden Plaza or something.
He ends up having such a mental and emotional breakdown from losing the presidency, even though he told himself he got reelected, and he tells everybody, I got reelected, but, they stole it from me. Because, he's never going to say that he lost.
Right.
But he becomes mentally demented enough that he moves in with Edward Snowden and actually and thinks that that's his next girlfriend, because he doesn't know the difference. There we go. There's your reality show. Let's really twist it. I'm always good for a little extra twist.
Well.
Hey, what can I say? So, that being said, so we're going to find out what's going on. Obviously, we say we should know in the next couple of days, but you know that there's already all the legal challenges are being filed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the Supreme Court could hand this presidency back to Trump, and would it?
No, I don't think it will get that far. I mean, you've got, obviously, for any election that looks like it's going to be close. I mean, after 2000, it sort of became a cottage industry. You have these enormous teams of lawyers on both sides who will go and fight over these, over ballots and voting and things like that. And we're already seeing that, the Republicans are launching, these lawsuits and trying to stop ballots from being counted and so forth. But, and they, they had started that before the election in terms of trying to slow down or stop some of this mail-in voting that Trump has been demonizing for so long and trying to discredit. But they've really failed at every turn. It never seems to work for them. I mean, maybe they slow things down and gum up the works temporarily, but they end up losing in court over and over again. So none of this is going to, in my opinion, ever get to the Supreme Court. Now, the only thing that could get to the Supreme Court is a situation like in 2000, where, of course, everyone remembers 2000, where you had the hanging chads in Florida, and at some point, people got a little impatient, I suppose, and the Supreme Court stepped in and said, oh, yeah, those votes in Florida, it's very important to count the votes, but you don't have to count those votes, and we're just going to go ahead and wrap this thing up in Bush v. Gore. But I don't think any of this is getting to the Supreme Court. And even if it does, there is some question about, would Amy Coney Barrett recuse herself? Because obviously she was nominated by Trump for the bench. But I don't see any of this getting that far. That's my opinion. I don't see any of this. I think they'll continue to fail at every turn in trying to contest these elections. I mean, they might manage to pull off, depending on a state's individual rules, a recount in some instances. But that never works out either. That nobody who and they have to pay for that, of course. They have to pay for the recount, but, it never works out. You don't end up winning those. It turns out, maybe the votes weren't, you might come up with a different number the second time you count all the ballots. Maybe there was an error somewhere. They happen, but it's never a sizable enough error to make any damn difference. So, no, none of this is getting to the Supreme Court, in my opinion. Did I lose you, Kevin?
I was going to say we're happy to have your opinion. We're happy to have your opinion. That's why you're on. So
yes.
So even though occasionally you're wrong, but outside of that, most of the time, you're right.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's talk about the Senate. So
yes.
I heard both stories, and I have not had a chance to fully investigate possibilities. One is the Republicans have already won the majority, and the other is there is still a small but doubtful pathway that the Democrats could tie them. Do you know what's actually going on? What's your current?
Yeah, I think the Republicans have. I think the Republicans have retained control of the Senate. And even when people were talking about the big blue wave, I didn't hear a lot of necessarily, we're going to retake the Senate. So, no, I think the Republicans are going to hold the Senate. Democrats hold the House, and so we'll have a Republican-controlled Senate and a democratically controlled House, like we've had for a while now. I don't think anything changes there. I mean, not that the Dems picked up, like they were able to knock off, what's his name, Cory Gardner. Hickenlooper was able to beat Cory Gardner for that Senate seat in Colorado. But then again, on the other side of the ledger, I forget the candidate's name now, who just beat Doug Jones in Alabama. It wasn't Roy Moore. It was somebody else. So, no. What's that?
But didn't they pick up a couple in Arizona? One or two in Arizona?
I can't remember. They may have.
McSally lost to the guy's husband, Kelly. So they picked up.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I haven't investigated enough. I heard because Georgia's having a runoff because nobody got 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So Georgia's Senate seat is unaccounted for right now.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that's unaccounted for. Yeah. So, but if both of those seats came in, that's what I heard. And they said it's unlikely that we would pick up both of those seats. And why do I think there's one other one out there? But that at the very best, the Dems would have 50-50. And of course, if there's a tiebreaker and it's Vice President Harris, then we know which way it's going to go. But if it's 49-51, which is more of the prediction, there's a little bit more blue strength in the Senate. But, well, I think it's 47 and 2 independents that caucus with the Senate. I think the actual breakdown. So, 4 more years of stonewalling from Mitch McConnell. Is that what you're predicting?
Oh, sure. You know, I believe it or not, though, I'll say something nice about Mitch McConnell. He's one of the few high-profile Republicans I know of who has been very consistent in being pro-mask and has even sort of softly criticized the White House for not being disciplined about safety measures and whatnot. But yeah, Mitch is one of the few Republicans, high-level at least Republicans, who has consistently publicly said, look, everybody should be wearing a mask. And of course, he's an older guy. I think he's almost 80 years old, and he's got some health problems. And with that skin discoloration thing he's got going on, he looks like he has Dutch elm disease. But, but I do appreciate anytime a Republican actually, for whatever reason decides to take COVID seriously. I like to, give credit where it's due.
We will be right back for the last segment of the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes. This week, our guest co-host is Matt Connarton, or our regular co-host, monthly co-host. It's Matt Connarton. Call him what you want.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
911, what is your emergency?
My kid shot himself.
All right, where's the wound, sir?
911, what's your emergency?
Please help. My son shot his brother.
911, what is your emergency?
Okay. 911, please state your emergency.
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns.
It wasn't locked.
Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
So I'm probably welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show. I realized I was in the middle of saying something to you, Matt. I was in the middle of a statement question. I went, wait a second, I should probably welcome everybody back. Welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show here at OMTimes. Remember, it is a live call-in show, and you can call in at 202-570-5786. 7057. Again, that's 202-570-7057. And be part of the conversation. Damn it. Anyways, so I'm probably having pipe dreams. But I did wonder briefly if we could get a slightly more, at least for the first couple of years, mellow Mitch McConnell with Biden in the presidency, because they do have a long history. And will they come together to at least get a few things done that, of course, will be claimed by both and twisted against each other? But do you think there's any small chance in hell we might get something done in the next 4 years, or is it just going to be a waste of the taxpayers' dollars?
Oh, I don't know. They may be able to work well together. I mean, I don't know what their relationship is like. I don't really have much concept of that, but they both served in the Senate together for a long time. And Biden is known to be a pretty gregarious guy and gets along with other senators. And, McConnell might be relieved. You see, I've had a theory all along that I think there's a part of Mitch McConnell that probably loves the idea of Trump losing because it'll just be easier. It'll just be less stress for him. I think Trump has, in many instances, at many turns, made Trump's job harder. I mean, made his own job harder, made McConnell's job harder. And I think that I think he's probably looking forward, even though it'll mean having to work with a Democratic president. I suspect that McConnell, who's somewhat of an institutionalist, is probably looking forward to some sort of a return to normalcy. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some bipartisan cooperation.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was kind of thinking, it could easily be that it's not going to be fabulous. It's not going to go back to the days when they actually would do cross-aisle stuff a whole lot of the time. But I think that the American people, the numbers they showed up in this election, I think that they got Washington's attention. And if you poke the bear too much, you could find yourself on the wrong side of the bear, no matter who you are. And, not only was it not a blue wave in the House, but the House lost seats. I mean, it's still the majority, but it's a little less the majority than it was.
Yeah.
And I think there's a whole discounting of the fact of Trump brought something to the White House that there was a lot of American people out there, a significant number, felt like the White House needed. And, so, I mean, I think that there has to be, if we were playing with real statesmen on either side, then they'd be like, hey, this is a warning shot across the bow. If we want to keep Washington and not get completely blown out of the water through some of these things, like we talked about, coming up from the state level and making changes that actually cuts into Washington's, monopoly on the American taxpayer dollar. I think that, how they have the antitrust suits and they're going to start to go after like Apple and Google and stuff like that? Wouldn't it be interesting if they did an antitrust suit against the Republican and Democratic Party that they've co-conspired together to actually make it impossible for other parties to be valid?
Now that is a pipe dream. Yeah.
I'm just kind of putting it out there.
Yeah.
Okay. Any surprises? Anything that really surprised you, tickled you pink, you felt good about any of these elections that you saw? or something really irritated you. That's okay too. But, you know, I'm actually trying to see if we can give a little bit of a positive note in this last session. Who knows?
You know, I'm glad that you know, the amount of voter participation with all the mail-in voting. Like, for example, in Texas, I remember at one point seeing that they had already received more mail-in ballots than the entirety of everyone who voted in the state of Texas in 2016. You know, seeing so many people participating in our democracy is impressive. I mean, this will probably turn out to have been, or maybe someone's already measured it as such, the highest level of voter participation in our history. I mean, it's remarkable what we've seen.
Since 1900. 1900
wow.
was the last time we had this kind of, that particularly was a particularly heated presidential election, and a lot of stuff was going on. So percentage of voters that voted, 1900 was the last time.
Okay.
That hit anywhere. And I think we actually were a little higher, but I don't know that to be positive, but it's the closest one was 1900. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so that's incredible. And hopefully too this proves to people that mail-in voting can work, you know, and I know the Republicans like to talk about, oh, when there's mail-in voting, there's all this fraud, but there's no evidence to support that. And in fact, we had talked about this recently on my show that, you know, you have states out west, like Utah, for example, where the voting is almost entirely by mail because everything is so spread out because it's such a rural state. And there are actually very few polling places apparently in Utah. And yet, who wins these elections in Utah? Republicans. It's a very Republican state. So, you know, to me, that really throws cold water on this theory that, oh, if you introduce mail-in voting, that you know, that just means the Democrats get to steal the election. It's not true, and that's not to say that voter fraud doesn't exist, but it's pretty rare, or it seems to be. So that's a great thing to take from this. Is, you know, I think we need to continue to modernize how we vote. I think mail-in voting should be a part of that. Mail-in voting, a great thing about it is it you know, not only obviously is it helpful in a time of a pandemic, you know, Jenny and I both voted by mail, but also too, it gives you more of a window of opportunity to vote, because, you know, it can be very hard when election day, you know, you have an election one day, not everybody can necessarily get there. And then I always hear people say too, oh, election day should be a national holiday. Well, that doesn't solve the problem, because a lot of people have to work holidays. You know, a lot of people, that's the day they get stuck working, is when there's a holiday, when all the other employees take the day off. So that doesn't solve it. So I think mail-in voting is phenomenal, and I'm very proud of the way it's been done here in New Hampshire. And I hope that it continues, you know, long after this pandemic is gone. I hope that people continue to mail in their ballots. I think it's a great way to do it.
I would also like to see them, because one or two states they do the automatic voter registration.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Oh yeah.
So yeah. So one of the things I got a kick out of, or brought a smile to my face, was the first trans person got elected as a senator to the Delaware state government.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And I thought that was worth noting. That is definitely this person, this individual. They worked in D.C. They've proven over and over again. They speak at the boys' club and the girls' club. They are out there and they're politically successful as an open trans person. Now, it is in Delaware. You know, if this was in a third world country like Arkansas or Alabama, you know, they'd get killed. Or parts of Texas, they'd run them over with their Trump train. But, you know, but I just thought that was worth mentioning. Good.
Yeah.
Can't wait till we have our first trans. I can't wait till we have our first trans person in our federal government.
Well, I would just add to that too, Dr. Kevin. We have a friend of mine. She appears on my show sometimes. Stacey Lawton from Nashua, New Hampshire, was just selected to the New Hampshire State Legislature, and she is trans.
Oh, now I didn't read anything about that.
Yep.
Was she House or Senate?
House. She's been elected to the New Hampshire House. Yep.
Okay, yeah, because there's been 2 or 3 trans people. She was the 4th trans person elected in Delaware, but all the rest of them were House. This is the first Senate, I think, was the distinction. But it's nice to know. Yay. Absolutely. I think we should be celebrating these people and celebrating that diversity gets to get represented in the government. This is part of our population, and we need to have their voice heard. They should at least be at the table, and that's true of all the voices that are going on. And, you know, I'm unfortunately, there'll be a lot of people's energy will go down, especially, some people's energy will go down, other people's energy will go up. Biden getting elected is going to definitely bring some more calmness to the waters, I think. We won't have the chaotic Trump tweetorama drama.
Right.
But this is the time when I want to invite listeners, take a week off, during Thanksgiving, whatever, maybe make it through Christmas, do the best you can with the pandemic we're having, and remember, it might not be this way had our government been more honest and accurate and had taken a role of leadership in the first 9 months of it. We might not be in as bad a place as we look like we're headed. But I really want people to go back, and I don't know whether I'll do the show again. I don't know if I'm going to do a TV show on it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to continue to push this American Anti-Corruption Act, which if we can get states to do that, that legalizes automatic voter registration. It legalizes mail-in ballots. In fact, it takes it so you can mail in or do it online. It legalizes things which we can do at the state level, which will change Washington. And if this shit show has showed us anything, it's still not functional. And this is a very fueled, angry country. And it's fueled by media, and it's fueled by our own government, and it's fueled by many of the major religions, or at least aspects of them, that fuel this hateful them consciousness. Instead of coming together and seeing how good we can be and how much we could create. So I do want to leave tonight's show with a little bit of a fun fact, because you and I have talked about the Electoral College several times. And when we first talked about it, you defended it and you thought we shouldn't get rid of it. You kind of changed along the way with that in our history together. I think, I could be wrong. I don't want to misquote you. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
But did you know, because this is what I've always said right along. If we're going to have an electoral college, then the electoral votes should be split up based on the percentages of the vote in the state. That would be a solution if you want to keep the college. You remember me saying that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Do you know that that's how the college was actually created? And it was changed?
No, I didn't realize that.
That's how the college was actually created. And it was changed in 1800 by Thomas Jefferson because Jefferson saw that it was going to work against him in his own home state. And they changed it to what it is now, and then it was changed one more time. So it's been changed twice since the original Electoral College. And
okay.
And I believe, I'm not positive about this one, I believe the second one was that the people that go vote have to vote what was the representation of the state. They don't have any leeway. So
yeah,
the original college split it up exactly how I said would be the way that an electoral college could work. That's how it was created. So next time somebody says our founding fathers knew what they were doing, yes, so why don't we go back and do what they did? Because we ain't.
Right.
There we go. Next week, Thoughtful Thursday with Reverend Lori Powers Otto as we share thoughtful and loving stories, inspirational, motivational, right here on the Dr. Kevin Show on OMTimes. We'll see you next week. Matt, thank you as always for coming. And